GHSA activities. Thank you. For GHSA activities, I think we'll go ahead and get going. It's been quite the week for everyone. So I want to welcome everyone today and thank you for joining this meeting of APP3, the Biosafety Biosecurity Action Package. Many thanks to Abby. God, sorry, I keep doing this to you, Gabby. To Gabby Essex, who is presenting the agenda on the screen for us right now on behalf of NTI. We're going to begin today with a presentation by the guest speaker for today, the Chief of the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention, BWC Implementation Support Unit at the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA. We will turn to, Daniel, I apologize, I realize that I've never pronounced your name, Daniel Feeks, to begin our presentation in just a moment. And he can tell me if I in fact murdered his last name's pronunciation.
You were fine, Julie, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. So very briefly, we will hear from Daniel, and then we will have about 25 minutes to discuss APP3's activities, including discussing the transition to leadership for the action package in 2024, looking at the question of stories of impact and what we might be able to share with GHSA and global health security stakeholders more broadly, go through the work that the technical working groups have done, and then finally we'll have about 5 minutes for programmatic updates, announcements, and other business. Does anyone have anything to add to the agenda, and is everyone comfortable with the agenda as written? Sounds like we have consensus on moving forward. So I would like to take this moment then and introduce Mr. Daniel Feeks, who will be presenting an update on recent work with the ISU and implementation of the BWC. Daniel, I'm turning over to you.
Thanks very much, Julie. Thanks for, first of all, for the invitation to present today, and good morning, afternoon, evening to all colleagues as well. I will hopefully now be able to share a set of slides here. And as Julie just said, so first of all, my name is Daniel Feeks. Julie, you pronounced it perfectly fine, so no worries on that, thank you. And I'm the head of the Implementation Support Unit of the Biological Weapons Convention here in Geneva, within the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs. As Julie said, I'll provide a hopefully fairly brief update on relevant activities under the BWC, the Biological Weapons Convention. And then if anyone has any questions, clarifications, please feel free to send those to me, or to speak up with those at the end of the presentation. I can also send an electronic version of the presentation for people to see afterwards. I'm hoping that everyone is aware of the BWC and what it is. For those who may be not, it's a disarmament convention. It's a very comprehensive scope, as you can see here on this slide, prohibits development, production, and so on of biological weapons. It's also a fairly old convention, dating back to the late 60s, early 70s. It entered into force in 1975. It's the first multilateral treaty to ban an entire category of weapons of mass destruction. It has a very comprehensive scope. It's non-discriminatory in its nature, and it's open to all states. And as you can see from the map here, most states in the world, 185 of them, have actually joined the convention already. There are 4 states that have signed it, and only a few that haven't yet joined it. So altogether 12 states that haven't yet signed or ratified the convention. One of the main things in the kind of recent past of the BWC was the fact that the 9th review conference took place last November, December. Review conferences of the BWC take place every 5 years, and they are the main opportunity to basically review the progress in the implementation of the convention, and also to plan out the road ahead, basically for the next 5 years as well. Now, obviously, last year was a pretty difficult time internationally. The geopolitical climate then, as is now, is not very positive for much success, particularly in the area of disarmament. Having said that, the review conference was able to adopt a final document by consensus, which is often the way in which success is measured at these kinds of meetings. And as you can see here from this quote on the screen from the Secretary General of the UN, it did offer a glimmer of hope, as he put it. What the review conference did, as I said, it adopted this final document. The main part of the document really is what we call the forward-looking part of the document, which really sets an intersessional program for the forthcoming kind of 4-year cycle, basically, until the 10th review conference, which is due to take place in 2027. That cycle has some familiar elements from those of you that have been participating in the previous intersessional cycles under the BWC, in that there will be an annual meeting of states parties, the MSP. The new thing here, and really the centerpiece of the review conference outcome, and what occupied most time during the 3 weeks of the review conference, is the establishment of a new working group on the strengthening of the convention. That group is going to meet for 15 days every year, and it has a much more action-orientated mandate than previous BWC meetings did. For example, the meetings of experts that have been happening in past intersessional cycles, which were mainly just an opportunity to present updates and information and to share best practices and experiences. This new working group is much more action-oriented and is meant to come up with recommendations on specific topics, and is also meant to decide on the detail of establishing 2 new kind of institutional mechanisms, one on reviewing developments in science and technology, and the other one on the implementation of a mechanism for international cooperation and assistance. In addition to that, the review conference agreed to extend the mandate of our implementation support unit, and also to add 1 additional staff post. So the implementation support unit, the ISU, is now, or as of next Monday, in fact, we will be fully staffed with 4 people rather than 3 as before. Here on the screen, you can see the 7 topics that the review conference decided this new working group should discuss. Some of them are very familiar, again, to those of you who have been involved in previous BWC discussions. So, for example, international cooperation and assistance, science and technology, confidence building. The new one here, and again, one of the most significant things about the decision to establish this new working group, is the 4th topic here on the list: compliance and verification. Those of you with very long memories may remember that during the 1990s, BWC states parties tried to negotiate a verification protocol to the BWC. In the end, those negotiations weren't successful. For about 20 years, the whole topic basically of verifying the BWC was off the formal agenda. It's now back on it again. This working group is to spend some of the time over the next 4 years discussing and hopefully coming up with recommendations on this topic of compliance and verification. And as I said, many of the other topics there are quite familiar. The really significant one is the fact that this topic of compliance and verification is on the agenda again, and also that this working group, as I said, has a much more action-oriented mandate than before. Just briefly on some of the procedural aspects, the review conference decided that the working group should complete its work as soon as possible, preferably by the end of 2025. That year is significant for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's the 50th anniversary of the entry into force of the Biological Weapons Convention. Secondly, it's also the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Geneva Protocol, which is the treaty back in 1925 that first prohibited the use of biological and chemical weapons. So there was an organizational meeting of the working group back in March, just for 2 days. They'd elected the chair and the vice chairs. So the working group is chaired by Ambassador Flavio D'Amico of Brazil. It adopted the agenda, the rules of procedure, and so on. And the most important thing, and that took up most of the time at that meeting back in March, was to agree on a schedule of activities, which is basically allocating the 7 topics I mentioned before to each of the 15 days for each of the coming 4 years. So it's basically a table which tells you which day which topic is going to be discussed. The first substantive session of the working group took place over 2 weeks last month, back in August of this year. Again, as I said, chaired by Ambassador D'Amico of Brazil. 3 of those 7 topics were discussed during those 2 weeks. That was international cooperation and assistance, plus the associated mechanism, science and technology, again, with the associated mechanism also being discussed, and also national implementation. The meeting received lots of technical briefings from international organizations, for example, the WHO, World Organization for Animal Health, the OPCW, IAEA, and so on. A number of working papers submitted by states parties. One of the most significant things, and again, this reflects the more action-oriented mandate of this working group, is that instead of just the meeting taking place and then not much happening in between the period until the next meeting, there are a whole series of informal consultations going on, and there are also a number of friends of the chair who have been identified and who are now working between the meetings on particular topics as well. So whereas in the past it was really just a meeting driven process with not much happening behind the scenes in between, we now have a very active informal process going on kind of in parallel to the formal meetings and between the formal meetings as well. And that meeting also adopted a procedural report, which you can find on our website. So moving away from the meeting now and into other activities that we're conducting. I won't go through everything that appears on this slide and also on the next one, but this is just to flag. We have been running for several years now an assistance and cooperation database, which was originally set up with the intention of countries that need assistance in implementing the BWC submitting requests in this database, and then countries able to offer assistance submitting offers, and then almost by magic that the kind of matchmaking process would happen. It hasn't quite worked out like that. There's obviously a lot more work that is required in the background to match offers and requests. What we have been doing during the course of this year is to validate and kind of reconfirm all of the information in the database. So all of the offers and all of the requests. We've been going to states parties to ask if their requests have been met, if the assistance that they're offering has been taken up by anyone. We're still going through that process now. It's a fairly laborious process, but also a really important one so that we can see exactly how effective this database is and the process surrounding it and what we can do to make that process better. I'd also just like to flag another few things that we've been doing as well. We have, again, for the last few years, been running a sponsorship program, which provides support for experts from developing countries to attend BWC meetings here in Geneva. In the past, we had very little funding for that. These days, we have much more funding, and we have been able, for example, to support about 40 experts coming to BWC meetings here in Geneva. And for the upcoming meetings at the end of this year, we're hoping to be able to sponsor around about 60 experts from developing countries to come to those. We've also, with funding from the European Union, been running what we call a Youth for Biosecurity initiative. Again, this is relevant to capacity building in developing countries. It also addresses gender aspects because we focus quite heavily on young women scientists from the global south. We've done this even during COVID. We did it as an online initiative. We've gone back now to kind of blend it, so partly online and partly bringing people here to Geneva as well. We're now building up quite a network of alumni of people that have been through this program over the past few years as well. We're also seeing that some of the experts that we had been that had been involved in this program are now appearing on their national delegations to BWC meetings as well. Another thing to just to flag is some of the assistance we've been providing. Again, this was funded by the European Union. This was a project that we kind of facilitated basically between Sri Lanka, which coming from a JEE that it had undergone. One of the recommendations was that it should establish a national inventory of dangerous pathogens with involvement by experts from the Netherlands and the provision of their software. We facilitated, like I said, a kind of partnership between the Netherlands and Sri Lanka to provide that software and training on that software for Sri Lanka to establish this national inventory. We are now working with Mongolia and again with the experts from the Netherlands to do something similar from Mongolia as well. And just recent or earlier this year in summertime, we for the first time ran a course with the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, again particularly focused on scientists from developing countries. This was a much more hands-on lab-based course, basically at the ICGEB lab in Trieste, where applicants went through a whole few days of hands-on training in the lab, particularly focusing on virus detection for pandemic pathogens. Something else I wanted to flag just quickly before I finish is the assistance that we are now offering to states in Africa. We have, over the years, states parties have said that a regional focus is particularly important. So we have now had, with funding from Canada, the UK, and the US, we're able to actually address a lot of the requests for assistance and support that we are receiving from African countries. So this is assistance that's available to all African states that are interested in either joining, if not already, or if they have, in strengthening their implementation of the BWC. Africa happens to be the region with the highest number of states that haven't yet joined the BWC, as you can see listed here on this slide. So basically, we are providing assistance in 4 different areas that you can see here, the 4 different pillars relating to the BWC. And we are providing assistance in these particular modalities by raising awareness, capacity building, strengthening coordination, and also through the sponsorship program that I just mentioned earlier. We are hoping that the benefits will be seen at the national level, at the sub-regional level, and also at the international level as well, where we're hoping that this assistance will contribute to strengthening the global norm against the deliberate use of disease through basically larger BWC membership and improved implementation, in this case on the African continent. The way in which we're providing the assistance here is very much, and it's important to say this is all very needs-based. This is all based on requests submitted by states in Africa in this case. And we spend quite a lot of time working out exactly what it is that those countries require. We collaborate also very regularly and intensively with regional and international partners. So, for example, we work closely with Africa CDC on this project, with other organizations that are working on the continent as well. We actually also now organizing every couple of months a meeting of assistance providers that are working with countries on the African continent as well. So that can involve either individual countries that are providing assistance to African countries, or international organizations or regional organizations, and we bring those people together every couple of months to basically coordinate and to share information and upcoming events and things like that. We're doing this through diverse modalities, combination of regional, sub-regional, and national activities, as you'll see in a moment. And an important element of this is also that we are, through these activities, we are empowering women and also youth engagement as well in all of these activities as well. Obviously, we hope the benefits. We are going to maximize complementarities. We are obviously aware that many other countries and many other regional international organizations are already active and working with African countries. So we want to complement those activities, make the most efficient use of resources, enhance the visibility, impact, and also, and very importantly, the sustainability of these initiatives. And obviously also by reaching out to others and convening these coordination meetings, we hope to avoid duplicating efforts already underway. On the right here, you can see a list, and this is more of an illustrative list than a complete list of the various partners that we're working with, ranging from the UN Security Council Resolution 1540 Committee and its group of experts, through Africa CDC, a whole range of different UN entities, also NGOs, very importantly, and also states that are providing bilateral assistance as well. You can see here, and again, I'll share these slides so that you don't have to kind of try and note all of these things down. We are organizing a whole range of different activities, as I said, at the regional, at the sub-regional, and at the national level. You can see some of them that are upcoming now, between now and the end of the year. We have just done fairly recently a legislative drafting and review workshop in Ghana. We are now very close to conducting both a national and a sub-regional events in Togo in a couple of weeks' time. And as you can see, other events taking place, again, both at the national, regional level. We have an event in the meeting, BWC meeting here in Geneva, which will summarize a lot of the events that we've done this year. And you can see also slightly more tentatively here in terms of some of the dates. You can see what we have in the pipeline already, particularly for the first half of next year as well. And we anticipate that several other events will be added in to this calendar for the first half of next year as well. I just also wanted to flag, so the activities I just described are funded in the framework of the Global Partnership Against the Spread of Weapons of Mass Destruction. These next couple of slides are describing activities that we're doing that are funded by the European Union. We have currently 2 projects running with the support of the European Union. The first one is basically focusing on what you can see described here on the screen from universality of the convention. The third one, the Youth for Biosecurity initiative that I already mentioned, for example. And also you can see that numbers 2 and 5 here are again these kind of national assistance projects that we've been running as well. And again, this is the second one, second EU project that we're currently assisting, implementing and assisting states parties with. This focuses partly on, again, on activities in Africa, which is obviously done very closely in coordination with the activities I just mentioned before. Working to build capacities for BWC national contact points, facilitating review of science and technology, which is basically a project that's, or a sub-project that's finished now, and also broadening support for voluntary transparency exercises, which again, something that many states parties have been asking us to help them with. So in this respect, in terms of this project, you can see again, we have a range of different activities that are coming up under these 2 particular EU projects. Fairly soon, next month, in fact, we have events taking place in Cambodia and in Mongolia. I mentioned just now the partnership that we have with Mongolia, with the Netherlands, on the National Inventory of Dangerous Pathogens, for example. We're organizing 2 regional training courses for BWC national contact points, one in the Dominican Republic next month, one hopefully for the Asia Pacific region, which again, tentatively at the moment, will be taking place in Bangkok. And we continue to work with on capacity building activities with a number of African states as well. And then under this project into next year, we will also be arranging similar regional training courses for national contact points for the Middle East and North Africa region, for Central Asia and for Europe, with a full-day workshop for also a kind of a global event for national contact points that will be taking place here in Geneva. And then obviously also continuing with the capacity building activities for countries in Africa as well. So lots of activities going on, particularly under the with the support from the countries of the Global Partnership on focusing on Africa. We are very much still working with countries and still developing activities. So still very much looking forward to hearing from other countries about their assistance needs and requirements as well. I will stop there. Hopefully I've not taken up too much time, but obviously, as I said, I'm happy to share the slides themselves, and also if there are any, happy to try and respond to any questions or comments that colleagues may have as well. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you so very much, Daniel. That was incredibly helpful. We do have just a few minutes for questions. If anyone has a question they would like to ask, you're more than welcome to use the virtual hand in Zoom to raise your hand, to come on camera and raise your actual physical hand so we can see you, or to indicate that you would like to make an intervention through the chat. We have several hands. All right, starting with Carlos.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I am in my car. I do apologize. Um, I have a question. So I'm from the Caribbean Public Health Agency, by the way. Excellent presentation. Um, what would have happened at the agency? We would have been without a biorisk lead at the agency for the last year, as human resources was going through getting that new person, which I am now in that lead. Um, so hearing about the activities that are currently going on in terms of the networking and capacity building, what drew my attention is that training exercise that will be happening in the Dominican Republic. Now, CAFA supports 26 member states, which is the entire region. So my question here is, how can we, one, get CAFA involved firstly, and then secondly, how can I more so get our Caribbean islands involved potentially in that particular workshop?
Julie, do you want me to answer straight away, or do you want to collect some more?
Let's collect one more question since Mona has her hand up also, Daniel, and then we'll turn back to you for both of those. Mona, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. This is Mona El-Shokri. I'm a professor of medical microbiology and immunology at Ain Shams University. My question would be that I have seen all the activity that has been done or planned to be done in the future. And one of the things that I think, or one of the gaps that I think that nobody has addressed yet is the educational curriculum for students that does not have anything to do with biorisk management, biosafety, and biosecurity. At the medical school, so far, we're still teaching the old biosafety classes or the risk groups of the pathogen. We didn't address this the concept of biorisk management and the concept of the new paradigm and how we have to have the risk assessment. And the other perspective that I had recently learned while I was working on the bench, I didn't see the aspects of like the biological weapon convention, the treaties, whatever. That was a new aspect. Nobody knows about it at the level of the faculty staff even. And I working now on integrating or developing a biorisk management module to the graduate students. But I think it would be much easier if would be a wholesome activity for the university at the national level. So have you ever thought of this particular gap to be addressed in the future plans? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Mona and Carlos. And there's one more question. I see one more hand up also. Daniel, there's one question from the chat, a request from Olivia, if you could talk a little bit more about the pathogen survey project. I think we'll collect one more question. I see, Michael, that you have your hand up, and then we'll turn and let our speaker deal with all of these really insightful questions.
All right. Thank you. My name is Michael Agbaji. I'm an associate professor from the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta in Nigeria. I've listened to the presentation. Two questions I have. The first is the future programs have been enunciated. Can we have a bit more information as to how this is going to be executed? And then secondly, just like the last speaker mentioned, we have a huge problem of pathogen control in this part of the world. And I wouldn't know if there's any plans as to how we can be helped in that regards. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So Daniel, we have, I think, as many questions as one could possibly address in the rest of the day, let alone the next couple of minutes. But turning over to you for the questions about CARFA and engagement, about the educational gap, the pathogen survey project, and then the questions about the concerns that were just raised facing facing an entire region
Sure.
and the implementation plan.
Thanks, Julian, and yeah, thanks to everyone for the very good questions as well. So first of all, back to Carlos's question at the beginning about CARFA and the Caribbean region, particularly in the light of the workshop I mentioned that we're conducting late October. It will actually be in Santo Domingo. Carlos, it may be best if I send you or actually I can put in the chat when I finish speaking, my email address, so that you can contact me directly. I can then put you in contact with my colleague who is actually organizing that workshop. its main focus is for national contact points under the BWC, who are, you know, specific individuals designated by their governments to be the focal point within their countries for the convention. But yeah, certainly happy to discuss how we can kind of link up and you know, collaborate with CAFA. We have done so in the past, and be happy to do so again now as well. It's good to meet you here online as well. In terms of Mona's question about education, yes, for sure, this is a particularly important area. It's one in which we ourselves have done some work. Our colleagues in the Office for Disarmament Affairs more broadly, we now have a disarmament education strategy. I can post in the chat as well a link to our disarmament education website, where there's quite a lot of resources and online training courses, many of which are more kind of general and a bit more at the sort of political level. So maybe not technical enough for, you know, people actually studying and working in labs. But I think I'm aware that, and this would be a question for others online, probably maybe from WHO or something, that there's quite a lot, you know, and particularly in terms of laboratory biosafety, biosecurity guidance and things from WHO as well. I think they are, if not already, they are coming out with like e-learning things in that respect. But again, I defer to people that know more about that. For Michael's question, I mean, we are, I think I described in the slides how we plan to go forwards with the different activities in particular regions, including in Africa. Again, I'm very happy for people to reach out to me, to contact me. As I said, I'll drop my contact details in the chat in a moment, and people can contact me. We have a team here, particularly working on that project in Africa, and they would be very happy to discuss with you and with other colleagues, you know, in more detail about those things as well. In terms of the question in the chat on, I think this is about the national inventory for dangerous pathogens that I mentioned as well, that we worked with Sri Lanka, and we're now beginning to work with Mongolia. I don't want to put Rick on the spot here, but I see that Rick Blyce from the Netherlands is actually online, and he's the person that we've been working with, or his team that we have been working with. So it may actually be better if Rick actually says something. We have in some ways kind of facilitated the project and everything, but it's Rick and his colleagues who have actually been, who have the software, who have the concept and everything. So I see that Rick has just turned on his camera. So Julie, if it's all right with you, if maybe Rick can say a bit about that.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Rick, but over to you.
Oh, that's fine, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you all for the question indeed. Well, we in the Netherlands, we've just developed a software tool for a national inventory of dangerous pathogens. It's required by a lot of international documents, but it's also very helpful to have an overview of which pathogens are in your country and where they are stored in which laboratories. And with that inventory, that can help you to set up specific biosecurity and biosafety measures, but also to act in the event of a deliberate release, how to respond to that. And so we've set up different workshops. We worked previously with countries in East Africa, in Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Kenya, and we moved on to Sri Lanka, as Daniel said, and now we're trying to set up a national inventory in Mongolia. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions. And the software, by the way, is also freely available, as we've published also a paper about it. Thanks.
All right, I'd like to ask everyone to join me in thanking our speaker. Daniel, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you, Rick, for chiming in at the end. And I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's participated in the conversation. I think it's amazing that we're having this kind of rich dialogue from our cars, from our teaching assignments, from our homes, and have the opportunity to learn what's happening globally, to learn what the ISU is doing to support these activities in many regions, and to find resources that we can continue to share across this action package. So thank you so much, Daniel, for your time. Appreciate it. All right, I'm turning over to my colleagues, Jennifer and Sam and Erin.
Thank you so much, Julie. Once again, Daniel, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing all the work that you're doing, and for Rick for jumping in. I think your willingness also to link up with members of our group is just amazing, and we're really grateful for that. I would like us to go to the next agenda item, which is going to be moderated by Sam, because she has the historical knowledge. She's also the former chair for the GHSA consortium. And we needed to speak about the APP3 activities and also the co-chairing of this action package, which comes up every year around this time. So as you all know, we are co-chairing with the US Department of Defense for 1 year, and then we step down. So we're looking for interested co-chairs at this point. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from today. Yeah, as Jennifer mentioned, it's sort of that time of the year, which is hard to believe when we're starting to think about next year and co-chairing or being a chair of this very important action package. So throwing it out there for folks on today to start thinking about that. Certainly, if you need to have any internal conversations with respective colleagues of your institution, organization, please feel free to do that. Just something to pose out to the group for you all to kind of think of as we get closer to the end of the calendar year. In terms of roles, expectations, certainly we would be happy to answer any questions you might have in terms of what that means as chair of this particular action package. Certainly, if there's any concerns or if there might be interest in co-chairs, I think this might have been, if I'm not mistaken, the very first year where we've had the consortium, the Global Health Security Agenda Consortium, essentially partner with the U.S. Department of State as co-chair. So that could certainly be a continued thing. I would say it helps kind of alleviate some of the time and efforts overall than one specific country and or organization taking that role on their own for being the actual chair. So something to think about. Again, please feel free to reach out to us if you do have any questions as to what that looks like. The chair position is a year long term. So although it feels like I think we just started as the co-chairs and are kind of getting things going with the different working groups and everything, it's yeah, unfortunately sort of that time of the year where it just has gone by quickly. We need to think of who wants to continue to take on this leadership role moving forward. With that said, in terms of the working groups, I think if I'm not mistaken, all working groups have certainly met at least on these calls over the last couple of months. The monthly calls have had some breakout groups, the last 2 ones at the very least. And I think some of at least 2 of the working groups, the Global South as well as Emerging Biological Risks Working Group, have also had some separate calls, meetings, discussions in the interim of these monthly meetings. So it seems like things are progressing in terms of identifying those activities that folks want to try to achieve between now and the end of the calendar year to try to meet goals, expectations, determining what seems feasible, doable, et cetera. So I know that at least with the Emerging Biological Risks Working Group, I'm very pleased and delighted to be co-chairing that with several fantastic co-chairs. And we have, at least with our activities, have identified some guest speakers for some of these future monthly meetings. I think the guest speakers are always a pleasure to have. So to have some, guest speakers speak of topics related to emerging biological risks, whether it's cybersecurity or other relevant topics to that. So that is forthcoming. And then we have some other plans to hopefully put together a toolkit. So utilizing the APP3 web page on the GHSA website, having tools and resources available for all of us, of course, those that are on the APP3 as a member, and then certainly to the larger GHSA community. Also, that information is will likely be available to the public as well through the GHSA website. So we've got those activities kind of lined up with a couple other things to achieve before the end of the year. I think Global South is also making some progress. There was a call last week for those that were able to join, and thinking more about those activities and kind of goals and objectives that particular working group wants to achieve. As for the third working group, the military civ group, I'm not quite sure where we're sort of at. I don't know if anyone else wants to maybe provide an update for that working group. I'll kind of open it up just because I'm not as familiar with that working group as the two others. Any updates for that particular working group? Okay. So stay tuned. I think, yeah, it's certainly a challenge to kind of get things moving. But I think all the working groups, we're all doing our best efforts to try to get stuff done and completed before the end of the calendar year. I guess if there aren't any other specific questions folks might have, I can certainly turn it over to Jacob. I know that you have some points you want to make sure you share regarding the secretariat position for next year as well. So Jacob, I'll turn it over to you now, please.
Thanks, Sam, and hello, everyone. Yes, quick announcement on the secretariat side of things. In addition to it being time to rotate the co-chairs, it's a bit of a bittersweet moment for us at NCI, but we've made the tough decision that at the end of this year, so we're not going anywhere yet, we'll need to retire from our secretariat position for the action package. It's been about 5 years, I think, of us in this role. So it's been a wonderful opportunity for us to support all of the activities going on through the action package and work so closely with so many of you who have been part of this group, in particular, some of the previous chairs and co-chairs. And we greatly appreciate all of the time and support you all have given us as we have been in this role. Unfortunately, the time has come for us to step back a little bit from that specific role. We'll still be involved in the action package itself as a member, but it is time to start looking for someone else who would be interested in taking on the position, whether that's for a year or something more long term. I think is very open to discussion. Don't let duration be something that deters you if you want to consider it. I will stress that for those of us in the civil society community, this is a wonderful opportunity to really step in, get this type of experience, and work very closely with either regional partners or governments in a way that really helps support and shape the agenda for the biosafety and biosecurity action package in the long term. So we've had a wonderful experience doing this. Can't speak highly enough of it. And we'll continue to support the action package as a member long term, but throughout the end of the year as the secretariat. So we'll be actively helping find the new co-chairs, working with the current co-chairs to find additional support for next year and continue those operations. We'll be putting together some information just on the roles and duties that we've been doing for the past 5 years and are happy to have any discussions with people who might be interested in taking a position like this on. Like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to support the group in this way, and we're not going far, but are making the difficult choice to sunset, at least in this role for the time being. So thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate that. I think, I'm not sure if there are any other particular updates. Certainly we'll open up to folks on the call to see if there are questions or if there are anything that you want to make sure you relay to the group. So we'll open it up there, please. Jennifer, anything else from you? I'm not sure if you wanted to speak about stories of impact or any other updates or things you wanted to make sure we covered today?
Yes, please. Stories of impact. We're always looking for those, especially those of us, and there are a few of us who are also on the task force for advocacy and communications. We need content also for our 2 websites, for the consortium and also for the Global Health Security Agenda, and also for our action package page. And I think the best way of sharing through media is showing, successful outcomes. But also, if you've had challenges you'd like to share and just suggest ways of how you got around those challenges, that would also be excellent. I did want to ask if the chairs for because we do have a few minutes left, if the chairs for the working groups wanted to add anything to what Sam had mentioned when she went over the working groups. I'm not sure if the CivMil actually has chairs at the moment, but definitely the Global South, we have 2 chairs, Anthony, and I was just wondering if they wanted to add anything about the working groups. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, on behalf of the co-chairs of the Global South Working Group, we'd just like to invite whoever is interested in what the work that we want to do to join at our next meeting. Just watch out for a communication from the Secretariat. Over.
Thank you, Peter. And so, yes, I think what we'll do is we'll circulate again the 3 working groups and maybe a short profile to the entire membership, just so that there's some new people and we didn't welcome them on, but there are quite a few of them who have joined this call. So we will definitely send that out to all of you. Erin, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thanks, Jennifer. Only just a plug for the importance of the co-chair positions and the power of them. We've found our participation incredibly useful, and when our time ends, we'll of course continue to support the action package in a different role. But if there are any members who or participants who have interest in the co-chair role, just please feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to talk you through what is involved in it and everything that kind of goes around it. I'd say that the power of the action package over the last several years has been continuity and the handoff between co-chairs. So it's important to us to make sure that that we do a good, strong handover for whoever it is that replaces us when the time comes. But that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's been amazing as, the consortium being made up of civil society, academia, and so on, to work with the US DoD so closely, chairing this action package. I really do second what Jacob said about civil society being engaged, in this space. If there aren't any other questions, I don't see any hands up. I would like to close on behalf of Erin and myself and our teams and the amazing Secretariat at NTI. And thank you for joining us today. We really, really enjoy having these monthly global conversations that are so, so important. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone.